Okay, so before this video starts, I just want to say, I don't know what's wrong with my hair. It's so puffy and it's so crazy, and I don't know how to fix it. And also, thank you guys so much for 4K. I don't even know how we got 4K, but that's crazy. I appreciate you guys so much. It's actually, I don't know, it's crazy. You guys are so cool. And also, thank you guys for the comments on my last video, on videos I should do. I did take some of them and put them on my notes, on like my to-do list, and I will be doing some of those. I didn't read all the comments, so I'm still going through those, and I might get more ideas. But one of them was reading a book, so that's what I'm gonna be doing to you. What I'm gonna be doing in this one. So yeah, I guess let's get started with the video. Okay, so you said you were having trouble sleeping, right? Yeah, okay. So I was thinking, maybe I could read you a book, and I could help you fall asleep. Yeah, okay. The book I have here is, it's an assortment of stories. It has 3 stories, and it's by Washington Irving. It has The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Rip Van Winkle, and the Spectre Bridge Room. Yeah. I will be reading The Legend of Sleepy Hollow in this sitting. It has 89 pages, so I don't think I'm gonna finish it all right now. But we can finish it another day if you want. I'm not the greatest reader, so yeah, if I study or like just randomly, like I don't know, if it's not that good, I'm sorry. But yeah, I guess let's get started. Chapter 1, A Sleepy Little Valley. In a large cove along the shore of the Hudson River, there is a small market town called Tarrytown. The town looks out on a wide part of the river known as the Tappan Sea. Dutch sailors discovered this place many years ago, but they did not name it. The good housewives of the area named it. They called it Tarrytown because their husbands used to stop to talk and waste time, or tarry, outside the village inn. I cannot say if this is the real truth, but it is what I was told. Not far from this village there is a little valley among high hills. It is one of the quietest and most peaceful places in the whole world. And here's the picture of Tarrytown. Here's the town, and the mountains, and then the clouds, and then the trees. A burbling brook runs through it with a soft, sleepy sound. All you hear in this valley are the whistles of quails and the tapping woodpeckers. When I was a young boy, I used to hunt squirrels in the tall walnut trees that shade one side of the valley. The sound of my gun rang through the woods and echoed through the still valley. I know of no better place to get away from the rest of the world and dream. Because of the lazy quiet of this valley, it has long been known as Sleepy Hollow. A dreamy feeling hangs over the land and drifts through the air. Some say that a German doctor put a curse on the place. Others say that an old Indian chief, the wizard of his tribe, held his powwows there. But one thing is for sure, the place still seems to hold the people under a spell. They believe in all sorts of superstitions. They often see strange sights or hear music and voices in the air. Stars and comets blaze across the valley, and nightmares play their tricks on people's minds. The whole neighborhood is rich with ghost stories and haunted spots. And here you can see the chief in the clouds. And I'm guessing that's the reader, or I mean the boy talking. And that's Sleepy Hollow. And that's the creek or whatever. The thing that most often haunts this valley is a phantom on horseback without a head. Some people say it is the ghost of a soldier whose head had been shot away during the Revolutionary War. They see him hurry along in the gloom of the night, as if on the wings of the wind. He haunts the valley and also the roads, especially the area around a nearby church. The story goes that the body of this phantom had been buried in the churchyard. Its ghost rides out at night in search of his head. They say that he rushes through Sleepy Hollow like a midnight tornado, in a hurry to get back to the churchyard before sunrise. The people of the little village gather around their fireplaces and tell wild tales about this ghostly thing. It is known as the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. And here's the Headless Horseman, and that's the churchyard right there with the tombstones. I should tell you one more thing. The people who live in Sleepy Hollow see and hear these mysterious things, yes, but everyone who comes in to stay in that sleepy area begins to dream dreams and see ghosts too. It is almost as if there is something bewitching in the air they breathe. Chapter 2. Ichabod Crane. I might be saying that wrong. Long ago in this valley there lived a man by the name of Ichabod Crane. He came from Connecticut and stayed for a time in Sleepy Hollow as its schoolmaster. Ichabod looked a lot like a crane bird. He was tall and very thin, with narrow shoulders and long arms and legs. His hands dangled a mile out of his sleeves. His feet were the size of shovels. His head was small and flat on the top. He had huge ears, large green glassy eyes, and a long pointed nose. If you saw his loose, floppy body on a windy day, with his baggy clothes fluttering about, you'd think it was a scarecrow from a cornfield. And that's Ichabod Crane right there. He taught in a squat, one-room schoolhouse built of rough logs. Many of the windows were broken and stuffed with pages of old books to keep the weather out. It was in a lonely but pleasant place, at the foot of the wooded hills, with a brook running close by. On sleepy summer days, the low hum of his students' voices sounded like bees in a hive. Now and then, this buzz was broken by a firm voice of the schoolmaster's. Sometimes there came the awful sound of a birch rod on the backside of some lazy student who needed to be helped along with his lessons. Ichabod always kept in mind the saying, "Spare the rod and spoil the child." Ichabod Crane certainly did not spoil his children, yet he was not one of the not one of those mean teachers who enjoyed punishing. He was choosy about whom to spank. The boys who ran in fear from him usually got away without a smack, but the tough little rascals who talked about him were sure to feel the stinging birch rod. He called this doing their parents a favor whenever he gave a spanking. He promised the child, "You'll remember this and thank me for it as long as you live." For some reason, the rascals never thanked him. And then here you can see Ichabod with his stick and then a child. When school hours were over, however, Ichabod Crane was the friend and playmate of the students. On holiday afternoons, he walked some of the smaller children home, especially if they had a pretty older sister or mothers who were good cooks. Ichabod had a reason for being friendly with his students and their parents. His pay as a teacher was very low. It was not enough to feed him, for even though he was thin, he was always hungry. To make it up for his low pay, parents let him live with them on their farm for weeks at a time. And so, at least he had food and a place to sleep as he moved from place to place around the neighborhood. Most of the people he stayed with still thought he was paid too much. They thought schoolmasters were just lazy loafers. To keep them happy, Ichabod helped with the work around the homes. He cut and raked hay, mended the fences, took the horses to water, drove the cows from pasture, and cut the wood for the winter fire. The children thought he was much nicer around the farms than he was at the schoolhouse. And then here you can see Ichabod doing some farm work and the children watching him. He made the mothers happy by cuddling the younger children. He would sit with a child on one knee and rock a cradle with his foot hours after hours. Ichabod also earned a little extra money at the singing teacher as the singing teacher of the neighborhood. On Sundays, he was very proud to stand at the front of the church with his group of singers. He was quite sure he was more important than even the preacher. One thing was sure, his voice was the loudest in the whole church. In fact, to this day, on quiet Sunday mornings, there are still strange, warbling sounds that come from that church. The people say that they are echoes from sounds that had once passed through the long nose of Ichabod Crane. The schoolmaster is an important man among the ladies of the country village. They see him as a gentleman. They think the schoolmaster is more polite and smarter than the rough farm boys, and almost as smart as the preacher. Oh, how they would fuss when Ichabod Crane came to eat at their farmhouse. Most of the time, the ladies put out an extra dish of cakes and candy, or their best silver teapot. And then here you can see Ichabod in the choir singing. Ichabod liked the smiles of all the young ladies and tried his best to please them. How happy he made them in the churchyard on Sundays. He gathered grapes for them from the wild vines that grew in the trees. He entertained them by reading all the messages on the tombstones. He took them for walks along the banks of the nearby pond. The shy country boys just stood back and watched, wishing they were half as clever. Ichabod moved around so much that he became a kind of traveling newspaper. The people were always glad to see him and hear all the stories and gossip he carried from house to house. The women thought that he was well educated, for he had read several books all the way through. He told them about one book called History of New England Witchcraft, written by Conan Mather, and he himself believed its scary tales and witches and their spells. Also, sorry, I don't have my glasses, so I can't read that well either. In here, you have Ichabod reading the tombstones, and here's Ichabod telling them about the witch book that he read and their scary tales. He became more interested in mysterious things the longer he lived in Sleepy Hollow. No tale was too wild or strange for him to believe. After school, he loved to lie on the grass next to the little brook that ran by his schoolhouse and study all the frightening tales of witchcraft in Conan Mather's book. When night came and he could no longer see to read, he headed off through dark swamps and lonely forests to the farmhouse where he was living. Every sound of nature at that witching hour played tricks on his mind. The moan of the whippoorwill from the hillside, the cry of the tree toad, the hooting of the screech owl, the sudden flapping wings of birds frightened from the bushes. Everything startled him, even the fireflies, which sparkled so bright in the darkest places, and flew in front of his face. And if a huge beetle came flying into him, poor Ichabod was scared out of his wits. Was it a witch sign? The only way he knew to calm his fears or drive away evil spirits was to sing church songs. The people of Sleepy Hollow often listened in wonder to tunes floating from a distant hill or along a dark road. And then here's him being scared of the owl and then the beetle. And you can see him drop his book. Ichabod also liked to spend long winter evenings with the old Dutch wives, listening to their tales of ghosts and goblins. They told of haunted fields and haunted brooks and haunted bridges and haunted houses, and always of the headless horseman. He would share what he had read of witchcraft and tell about the scary sights and sounds that had gone on long ago in Connecticut. Sometimes he frightened them with his ideas about comets and shooting stars. He even got them to believe that the world did not turn all the way around and that half the time they were upside down. But all good things must end. Before long, the evening in the cozy room by the crackling wood fire was over. Then he had to face the terrors of his lonely walk home. What awful shapes and scary shadows crossed his path on a dark, snowy night. How he wished he were back in that warm room. Snow-covered bushes, like ghosts dressed in white sheets, seemed to jump out in front of him. He would shrink with terror at the sounds of his own steps on the frosty crunch under his feet. He was afraid to look over his shoulder, thinking he might see some beast sneaking up behind him. And then here's him reading to the Dutch wives about the scary witch tales. And then here we get another picture of him walking home. And when a rushing blast of wind howled through the trees, he thought it was the headless horseman on one of his night rides. But these were only the terrors of the night. During the day, things were just fine, and he would have had a pleasant life in his path, if his path had not been crossed by something that causes more mystery to a man than all ghosts, goblins, and witches put together. And that was a woman. True, real. Chapter 3, Christina Van Tassel. One of Ichabod Crane's music students was Katrina Van Tassel. She was the daughter and only child of a rich Dutch farmer. Katrina was just 18 and pretty as a picture. You might say she was as ripe and rosy-cheeked as one of her father's peaches. She was also a flirt. She wore a type of fancy clothing that would best show off her beauty. Her petticoats were always just short enough to show the prettiest foot and ankle Ichabod had ever seen. Ichabod Crane had a soft heart towards the ladies, so it is not surprising that he liked such a beautiful girl as Katrina. He liked her even more when he saw her father's huge mansion. And then here we have Katrina. I think that's her name. Yeah, Katrina. When he saw her father's huge mansion. Katrina's father, Baltus Van Tassel, was one of the richest farmers in the whole area. His expensive home was located on the banks of the Hudson. A great elm tree spread its broad branches over it. At the foot of the tree, a spring of the softest and sweetest water bubbled up in a little well, and then sparkled away through the grass to a nearby brook. Next to the farmhouse was a wonderful large barn. The rich treasures of the farm were everywhere. Swallows swooped and twittered around in the air. Rows of cooing pigeons were enjoying the sunshine on the roof. Fat pigs were grunting in the peace of their large pens, while their babies followed them around, snuffing at the air. Geese and ducks were floating on a nearby pond. Turkeys were gobbling through the farmyard. A proud rooster marched around in front of the barn door, like a fine gentleman. He clapped his wings and crowed with pride. He snatched and tore up the earth with his feet, and then called his hungry family of henwives and chick children to enjoy the treat he had found for them. And here we see the mansion, and then the barn, and the pigs, and all the little animals, and then the pond with the geese and all that stuff. The schoolmaster's mouth watered as he looked at all these wonderful things to eat. He could imagine them all cooked up for a fine feast. A young pig, tender and juicy, with an apple in its mouth. Sides of bacon and ham. pigeons put to bed in a tasty pot pie, geese and ducks swimming in gravy. He imagined every turkey sewn up and stuffed with spicy dressing, and the rooster lay flat on his back on a platter, his drumstick sticking straight up. Still dreaming of food, Ichabod's great green eyes rolled over to the beautiful Van Tassel estate. All around him were rich fields of wheat, rye, buckwheat, and Indian corn, and orchards heavy with ripe fruit. His heart longed for the young Katrina, for some day when her parents died, all of this would belong to her, and if he could make her his wife, it would also belong to him. Ichabod saw how he could turn everything into cash. The money could be used to buy land and build palaces in the wilderness. He could see Katrina with a whole family of children, sitting on the top of a wagon loaded with their household goods, and he saw himself riding a mare with a colt at her heels, setting out to seek his fortune. And then here is Ichabod imagining all his riches all the things he would get if he married her, Katrina. When he walked up to the house, his desire for Katrina grew even stronger. It was one of those large farmhouses built in the style of the first Dutch settlers. There was a porch along the front which could be closed up in a bad weather. All around the porch hung farm tools, harnesses, bridles, and nets for fishing. Benches were built along the sides for summer use. There was a great spinning wheel at one end and a butter churn at the other. Ichabod left the porch and went into the pantry of the living room. Shelves full of expensive powder shone before his eyes. In one corner stood a huge bag of wool, ready to be spun. In another corner he saw a pile of fine woven cloth, just taken from the loom, ears of Indian corn and string of dried apples, peaches, and bright red peppers decorated the walls. He peeped into the parlor through a partly open door, and it was full of fancy chairs and dark mahogany tables that shone like mirrors. Dried fruits, shells, and colored birds' eggs hung above the fireplace. A great orchard's egg was hung from the center of the room, and a cupboard held rich treasures of old silver and fine china. And here you can see him in the pantry. Ichabod's only thought now was how to win the heart of the Van Tassel's daughter. This would be a hard task. This would be harder even than the most heroic task of the knights of old. The only thing they had to face were giants and fiery dragons. All a knight had to do was to get through gates of iron and brass and walls of stone to the castle room where the lady of his heart was held. Then the lady would agree to marry him, and they'd live happily ever after. Ichabod, however, had a harder job. He had to win his way to the heart of the teasing country girl, and how she could change her mind from one day to the next. Not only that, he had to deal with all the other young men who were just as interested in he had to deal with all the other young men who were just as interested in Katrina as he was. They kept a watchful and angry eye on one another, but were ready to join together against someone new like Ichabod.